Apologies in order to Nick Sirianni.
Who are you asking?
I'm asking you.
Oh, okay. So here's what I've realized. Nick Sirianni, Dan Campbell, biting kneecaps, Joe Mazzulla, I wish the floor tasted like blood.
Yeah, I like that.
We just might be in the golden age of weird coaches, and I doubted all of them. Like Dan Campbell's opening press conference, I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work. Worked. Joe Mazzulla, biggest Celtics fan in the world, your buddy Bill Simmons, openly mocked that guy for the first 6 months. Well, called him second row Joe, said he wasn't ready for the job, whatever it is, and now he's one of the best coaches in the NBA. This guy's opening press conference was, if you guys remember it, about as bad as any ever was. And then I think because that seemed so like tepid and awkward, he then overcompensated by just becoming the South Philly jerk to the media, like, you know what I mean, publicly. Whatever it is, man, like this is where I will concede. I normally don't buy into the you had to play to understand. I don't buy into that with most things. There's one part of it where it might be true. Maybe lack of playing makes me have a bit of a blind spot on what type of coaching players would relate to. Like maybe a lot of the stuff that I find absurd, they love. You know what I mean? Maybe a lot of the stuff that I find like he is courting criticism, he's doing it so it's focused on him and not on the others. I don't know. What I do know is in their two biggest games of the year, they played their two best games. He's prepared them for 2 Super Bowls. Offensively, they were great in both Super Bowls. So, yeah, I mean, he deserves credit.
He can coach. We have to admit, there's no reason to think he can't coach.
That's right.
I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. They were a 4-win team, and I get it, they had made the playoffs before and won that Super Bowl, but they won 4 games the year before he got there. Jalen Hurts was a backup that no one thought could throw, all right, except Mama Hurts, you know?
Yes.
Like, and he helps develop Jalen Hurts into now a top 5, whatever, quarterback, top 6, whatever, and goes to the playoffs every time, Super Bowl every year, Super Bowl twice, and now has won one against what we consider the best coach in the league. I mean, there's no reason to think he can't win. And in his 4 years, he's had 3 different offensive coordinators and 3 different defensive coordinators. So he got to get the credit. We have to give the credit to Nick Sirianni. And just like Jalen Hurts, who's a different type of quarterback than we're used to seeing, we have to look at him, and you mentioned some of the guys, Dan Campbell. Like, success comes in different packages. And everybody's not going to be, you know, one type of coach. Some guys are going to do it differently. And we have to accept that this guy, it's all about wins and losses.
Yeah.
Because Greg, you know it better than all of us. I would think every head coach knows X's and O's. So it's about, can you relate to the players? Can you get them to run through a wall for you? Whatever you have to do to get those W's, and this dude gets W's.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we go back to the beginning of this season and we look at what transpired with him not being able to select his coordinators and him potentially being on, I thought it was a sign of he's on the hot seat. He has to win.
And he was,
like,
I think.
But there also had to be something that Howie Roseman and others saw, like, okay, there's something to him kind of being like Jalen Hurts, if you will. If we put the right pieces around him and allow him to focus on what he does really well, we got something really special here. Like his ability to manage the personalities on that team, like A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, the feud or whatever the relationship might have been was.
Can I ask you about a specific play?
Absolutely.
Jalen AJ Brown comes off the field and kind of yells, or they have some sort of, from, if you didn't know, a low-level confrontation.
Yep.
I believe the next play, AJ scores a touchdown.
It was after the Mahomes pick.
And they're laughing.
They joke about the
what was your read on that interaction and then the corresponding touchdown?
My read on that is like you got to kind of meet crazy with crazy. Like for AJ Brown to respond like that, you're up
17-0 in the Super Bowl.
Don't implode and allow your opponent to gain some type of momentum. Your head coach, he didn't allow AJ Brown to just yell at him. He let him know, like, look, believe and trust the process, whatever he said.
Yeah.
And then the next play, he knows, okay, let me get him to reset, lock back in. Let me get him a quick, easy pass. Let's get him something, because he understands every receiver. If we get in the end zone, the rest of the game, we're good. I didn't get in the end zone. Everything on top of that is ice cream.
Okay, let's talk about this. I'm actually excited to talk about this because I think there's more to unpack. Nick Sirianni, right? He's not the master of the X's and O's. He's the walk around coach, or whatever, however you want to phrase it. And I think Greg Olson did a pretty good job of highlighting this in terms of like actually some of the benefits of that. That when you're not so hyper focused on the X's and O's, and you're not so focused on the play calling and all of that, because that is where all the attention really is. You really have to see the flow of the game, what's happening. It's complicated. That you now can't actually interact with everyone else, and now you start to lose sight of other aspects of the game, of the players, etc. And so when you have great coordinators, it allows now Nick Sirianni to be able to really manage the game, the team, the players, the practices, the energy, the momentum, the culture, etc., in ways that he normally wouldn't be. And so what Sirianni does, and this is very obvious to me, that he is so hyper-focused on the small details. He really is. He keeps his team being detailed-oriented. And I think even Mailata said something about saying, this team is so focused on details, and that starts with coaching, is what he said. Now, of course, that could be coordinators as well. But again, a lot of that is going to be with Sirianni. And so first off, like that little thing with AJ Brown, like that was nothing, that was legit nothing. And I don't even know what he was saying, but it could have been like, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, or, stay focused, whatever it is. And like, those things can help too. Like, listen, I get it. And I think it was actually a pretty honest take from Nick Wright being like, listen, I don't think you need to play in order to understand. And of course, like, I agree with that too, but I do think if you don't play, that's why I always say you need to play at least like some sort of competitiveness. Like, heck, you could be, as long as you played even in middle school, as long as you played for a team that you actually had to try out for, and that you could be cut and you had to fight for playing time. Like, even if you just had that limited experience, I think that could be enough to kind of have a little bit deeper of an understanding. I don't think you have to play in the NFL, but of course, if you play in the NFL, then, you're going to have a ton more experience. But yeah, you do. Like, I think a lot of non-players don't understand the relationship that you have with other players, with coaches. And again, it has to be more than just kind of the teams where like everyone just plays, or you just sign up and you have a game once a week. Like, it's got to be like where you're like actually like truly working hard to make the team, to stay on the team, to get playing time. You're having hard conversations with coaches. Coaches are yelling at you. Like you're out there until the sun goes down and then some. You're practicing on your own. Teams where you're practicing like every single day, especially if you play in at least grade school. I mean, you practice every single day. And then you have summer and spring. Depending on what sport you're playing. Like, so like you got to really know what it's like. You got to know what it's like to spend all that time with a coach. You got to know what it's like to love a coach. You got to know what it's like to fear a coach. You got to know what it's like when you have a funny coach, when you have a coach who's just straight up weird, when you have a coach who clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. And you're kind of like, I know more than this coach, and there's other coaches that you'd say like, wow, that guy knows everything, but like, he makes me uncomfortable. Like, you got to have those experiences. And any athlete who's played far enough will eventually kind of scratch all those boxes. And so, yeah, I could understand why people could have a problem with Sirianni. And I could understand why even someone like a Jalen Hurts initially would maybe have had issues, because Sirianni is not necessarily the guy with the answers. And so I get it. Like, if you're a player and you're like, I need answers, Sirianni's not necessarily there to give them to you. The coordinators are. Fangio is there. Kellen Moore, Shane Steichen, etc. So I get it, and Jalen Hurts is really all business. So that's why Jalen Hurts, I'm sure, because like they talked about how Jalen Hurts and Sirianni like are not best friends, like, which is fine. You don't have to be best friends, but they respect each other and they like each other. But they're not gonna get their wives together and go to Disney World together, which again is totally fine. And so I get it. I can get why some people just struggle with Nick Sirianni, but you also can't doubt what he brings. Again, I've played for certain coaches where they did not give me the answers that I needed in certain moments, but they also instilled in me peace and calmness and confidence And it wasn't done in this bravado, you can do anything. It was just their mere presence made me feel like, and I've talked about this before, that like I can make mistakes, that I can mess up and not have my world come down on me, which then allowed me to play more free and loose, which then made me a better player. So yeah, when there was things that were happening mechanically, like, right, that coach was not there to help me. He was not there to help me. But everything else, masterclass. And then I told you guys this before. I've had other coaches that I played for that absolutely made me better than I could ever be. But it was so brutal to play for them, and being on the field in front of them was brutal. If you did make the tiniest little mistake, it was like, you're done. It's over. See you never. And it was like, that's so difficult to play under. It just is. And so again, like, all players respond to different coaches, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, does Sirianni get an apology? Absolutely. Because he can't just act like this is just because of coordinators. Now, again, to be clear, I really think if you don't have Fangio and Kellen Moore here, like, you could be in trouble, because Kellen Moore, masterclass. Fangio, masterclass. But Andy Reid needed Spags. Andy Reid needed Spags, you know? And so those things matter. And the Philadelphia Eagles were, without a shadow of a doubt, ready to play. And when that team came in, when the Philadelphia Eagles went in at halftime with the big lead, it's Sirianni's job to make sure that this team is not like popping champagne and celebrating. You know, it's his job to keep everyone focused. And apparently, like, he did say that. He was kind of like, hey, this team can come back in any given moment. Like, this is far from done. This is far from done. We know what Tom Brady did, you know, in a Super Bowl. We've known what Patrick Mahomes has done. Patrick Mahomes has come back and beaten us in 22. You know, and that stuff's important. It can seem so easy, but even something as simple as just saying a simple sentence like that is enough to kind of keep everyone, because it is hard. Because I said this before, a lot of these guys are a bunch of kids. Cooper DeJean's 22 years old, man. And like, a lot of these guys are legitimate kids. And I forget who it was. Someone who's a little bit younger, but I can't think of their name. They weren't in the league. Someone with the Philadelphia Eagles. And it might have been Saquon Barkley, actually. And he's like, yeah, you know, winning this Super Bowl took me, you know, longer than I would have thought or something. And it's like, because these guys enter the league and truly feel like they're just going to win. I mean, heck, Jalen Carter, you know, wins a natty, plays 1 year in the NFL, you know, not the perfect year. They lose. The next year, wins a Super Bowl. So again, in his mind, he's like, yeah, what do you mean? That's what I do. I play ball, I win. Like, that's just life. And as so many of these athletes think that they're just going to, you know, get into the NFL and just ball. You know, Caleb Williams literally thought, yeah, man, are you kidding me? We're going to ball. I mean, heck, in Jaden Daniels' world, that's what happened. He entered the league and he balled, and he was a game away from being in the Super Bowl. And considering how those Kansas City Chiefs played, he could have won a Super Bowl potentially. So, but a lot of these guys just feel like, hey, man, I got it. And that's obviously not always the case. So it's not hard to imagine that even a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, when they're up big, they could already start celebrating. You know, Gardner Johnson could be like, yeah, buddy, we're good. Slay's like, oh, yeah, taking pictures. I mean, like, things can get out of control very quickly. And that is, you know, a huge responsibility of a coach like Sirianni. And he has that luxury when he's not now trying to lock in at halftime being like, what do we need to do? And yet he still has a very complimentary relationship with a Fangio, with a Kellen Moore. So, you know, it's I really don't think Nick Sirianni gets enough credit. But just like I said with my Jalen Hurts take, I get why the eye test, and obviously it's a little bit different when we're talking about an eye test with a coach, but I get why the eye test and the perception is kind of like, what do you do? Why do you matter? You know, if we remove these coordinators, who would you be? And it's just like, I do get it. I really, really do. And I get why some players would not like him and why some players would love him. You know, I get it. But it can't be even remotely questioned that Nick Sirianni does get this team to play in a way that gives them insane belief. They have freedom. They get to have their personality. They have belief. They're hyper focused on the details, and every single player praised Nick Sirianni. Every single player in all of the interviews, they all said Coach Sirianni, Nick, whatever, you know, they all said it. Every single one of them. And it's authentic. They have no reason to do lip service. They got no reason for it. You know, and they can just give kind of like a random shout out, hey, man, you know, Coach Sirianni really kept us focused, and, you know, that's great. And then they moved on, but they weren't. Like, they made an emphasis to be like, you know, like, give Nick Sirianni his flowers. And that goes a long way, too. A lot of these players wanted to win for themselves, and they wanted to win for Nick. They wanted to win for each other. And that's special. And, you know, I can't say that some of these other coaches are doing that right now. Seriously. And some of these coaches that would be perceived as better. I don't know if these players are playing like that for Shanahan or for Kevin O'Connell or Harbaugh right now. Pick a Harbaugh. You know, I'm not so sure. And again, some of those coaches I think are technically better than a Sirianni. But yet, like, I don't know if they rally the troops in a way that Nick can and get that belief and get that excitement, get that joy, get that confidence, have a sense of freedom, you know? And it goes a long way. It goes so long that they go to 2 Super Bowls and win 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes stopping a 3-peat. I mean, that's the fruit. That's the proof right there. You know, I mean, if that's not a mic drop, I don't know what is. Listen, am I going to argue that Nick Sirianni is one of the greatest coaches I've ever seen in my entire life? I'm not ready to say that. I know the win percentage and all of that. He hasn't had an amazing team, which most coaches who win a lot need to have great teams. But you know, I don't feel any rush to try to be like Nick Sirianni is a top 2 coach. Like, that conversation is a little bit less interesting to me, at least right now. And all I do know is that he does deserve a lot of apologies. He deserves a ton of praise. And he deserves to just go on his own little victory lap, man, and enjoy it. Because, you know, let's not act like winning Super Bowls is easy. Dan Campbell didn't win a Super Bowl. Shanahan has not won a Super Bowl. Kevin O'Connell has not won a Super Bowl. Harbaugh has not won a Super Bowl. You know, and a lot of these guys had legit teams, legit opportunities to win. And they come up short. Their team is not ready to play. You know, you can point to true, legit coaching failures. And Nick Sirianni did not let this team fail. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's probably maybe what you can ultimately say what a coach's job is to do, is to just not let your team fail. Put the players in positions to succeed. Those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Nick Sirianni? Do you think Nick and anyone else owes Sirianni an apology? And how do you feel he kind of handled this whole season? And, you know, let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.